Welcome to the CFB Dynasty Podcast with hosts Matt Knowles and Brian McElfish.
Hey everybody, how you doing out there? This is the CFBDynasty.com podcast. My name is Matt Knowles. Over there on the other side is the founder and creator of CFBDynasty.com, Mr. Brian McElfish. How you doing today, Brian?
Hola, I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Doing good. And also over there, you could call him Dougie Doug. You could call him Dougie Fresh. Call him whatever you want. Just don't call him Champ. Joining us again today is Mr. Doug Gravely. Doug, how you doing today, man?
Hey, guys. I'm good. How are you, Matt?
Doing great, man. Today we got a great show for you. We're going to be talking about the portal. The portal has become more interesting, I think, than National Signing Day, because you get to see guys, a lot of them are established, going to homes they think are going to give them a bigger pop. They could be guys that were underutilized at their former location. There could be guys that went into the portal that went back to their original location. Who knows? But the portal has become one of the most fun things to pay attention to, especially for college fantasy. So today we're going to be talking about our personal tops from the portal for 2023. So BMAC, why don't you talk a little bit about the portal for those that are watching this that don't even know what we're talking about, which I think that should be zero, but we're going to treat it like there's one person that's watching this that doesn't know what the portal is. Here we go.
Yeah, for sure. It's just basically like the Dr. Pepper commercial, right? Where they transfer from one school to another. They literally hop in the portal and then, they show up on the field just like the Ole Miss graphics you probably saw on Twitter recently. And boom, there they are. So they've got their new landing spot. They get one free. So there's a couple things here, and you'll see this on the website under Draft Prep Portal Tracker. We've got them all listed. I think everything is totally up to date. If you see anything like a destination that's not entered on the site, let me know. But I think it's up to date. So transfer portal. There's windows of when you can enter the portal, but you can. If you're in the portal, you can land at a school any day during the year. So it opened December 5th, closed 45 days later on January 18th, 2023. And then there's going to be another portal period, after spring from May 1st through 15th. So you're going to see schools that are going to be looking to fill their roster that, maybe they didn't on signing day, kind of end with, all the freshmen that they needed. There's some certain portal rules that are listed on there, blah, blah, blah. You can go check it out there and then scroll down and you'll see players with kind of some pagination on the bottom where you can get through all the players that are in the portal. You can use this little search function to search a name, a school, whatever. And then we've got running backs listed there, wide receivers, and they're not really listed in order. But that's what we're going to talk about today.
So, Doug, one of the things about the portal, BMAC had mentioned it a little bit, is that there are some rules now where you have two different windows. That's something that was just implemented this year. They've also talked about that, players are only going to get one free transfer now. They're not going to have this where they can just transfer nonstop from school to school to school. Do you think that the portal is out of control? Do you think that the new rules they're talking about are good, or do you think they need to clamp down even tighter on the portal? What's your feeling about having the portal out there as it is right now?
I think the new rules are good. I think, like anything, it's going to take time to establish. I think the transfer portal is insane. I think that there may even need to be a little bit more strict rules, I guess.
Yes, there needs to be a lot more strict rules. Like, it's freaking chaos with the portal, NIL, the whole season. Like, so you're trying to hire and fire coaches at the same time the portal is open, and recruiting, like early signing day, is all in like December at the end of the year. It's totally insane. So like how the NFL calendar works, where, us who are, paying attention to the NFL, there's like schedule release season, and that's awesome. And then there's free agency, and then there's the draft, and everything kind of works and flows nicely. College football, it's chaos. Coaches are burning out more than ever. Like, there needs to be a massive overhaul. And I think that is coming. It's coming for NIL for sure. It's not going to be what it is now for a long time.
Yeah, having seasons and windows is great, especially like when you play college fantasy football and you've got certain windows where you can trade, and nobody should be trying to trade outside the window.
I don't know what you're talking about there.
There's some people in our league, Doug, that want to be able to make trades like 13 months out of the year. And it's like, dude, let's fit them into some windows, BMAC. Anyways, I digress. Let's get back to the topic at hand, which is the portal. So BMAC, tell everybody what we're going to be doing today with the portal.
All right, so we're gonna kind of go over it by position as if we were like drafting today. Like, what would these like rankings be for college fantasy? So, if you're thinking about like a known commodity, right? Like you think about Ole Miss and the portal craziness that's happening there. You've got the starter from last year, Jackson Dart, who transferred in from USC the previous year. Competing against Spencer Sanders, who's been a starter in college football since 1999. And then you've also got the former five-star Walker Howard in there. So which one of those are you going to draft if we're drafting today? There's still like a lot of unknown. Certainly one of those mugs is going to transfer out by the end of spring and find a new home. But a lot of unknowns out there. So these rankings right now are focused on if we were drafting today, how would we kind of position them?
So do you want to start, BMAC? Where do you want to start? You want to start with quarterbacks?
I'll start with quarterbacks. So my top quarterback, if we were drafting today, is probably the consensus top one, I would assume, but Sam Hartman. He's going to Notre Dame from Wake Forest. Notre Dame had the 98th passing offense last year, which is a red flag if you're looking at a fantasy player. But Sam Hartman, the last 2 years at Wake Forest, between the 3,700 and 4,200 passing yards mark, 38 and 39 touchdowns in both of those years. Like, he's a proven commodity. Wherever he went was going to be good. And I think he's got, NFL potential. What's going to be really interesting to see with Michael Mayer leaving, who will be the benefactors of Sam Hartman, and they'll likely be fantasy relevant, whoever they are at receiver and tight end for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I've got Sam Hartman as my number one overall period across all positions for the same reason. I think that you also want to be looking at, like you said, the benefactors of who are going to be getting on the other end of Sam Hartman. So I'd be also looking at who are the receivers, who are the running backs that are coming out of the backfield at Notre Dame. And also, if you're someone that that plays college to pro, this is going to be a great move, not because Wake isn't a Power 5 team, but because you don't really get a bigger national brand than Notre Dame. So his name is going to be out there. The market is going to be out there. Marketing is going to be out there. So it's probably going to help his draft stock to go up just a little bit as well, which is going to probably put him in a better position when he goes to the pros.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think Hartman is definitely my number one quarterback in the transfer portal, but not my number one overall.
Really? I'm going to be very interested to hear what your number one overall is. So, BMAC, do you want to just go straight down who your top five are or who your tops are at quarterback? We'll just go down the list, and then I'll tell you mine. Doug will tell you his, and we'll go to the next position.
Yeah, sounds good. And I can't wait to watch Hartman and see what this Notre Dame offense looks like. Like, they start off against Navy this year, then Tennessee State, and then they're at NC State, one of the other potential top portal quarterbacks. One that's on my list for sure. Then Central Michigan. Then they play Ohio State at home. That's going to be a big game and a big test. At Duke, at Louisville, USC, Pitt, at Clemson. So there's some really tough games in there for Hartman and Notre Dame that are going to be, prime time, fun games to watch. All right, so number 2 on my list, if I was drafting today, Davis Brin. Transferred over from Tulsa to Georgia Southern. And really, Brin was great last year. He had battled through some injuries near the end of the year, but Georgia Southern was the 4th ranked passing offense in the country. And Brin, who will probably have 1 year of eligibility, it'll be a fantastic year next year. And third, I've got Brennan Armstrong. You want to talk about why I probably have him third, Matt, going to your school from UVA?
I think that you got a huge opening there. NC State showed that last year they could win with 4 quarterbacks, but they could also lose and look horrible with all 4 of those same quarterbacks. Having a quarterback that has got his offensive coordinator Robert Anae coming back, who was there with him. They both kind of went their separate ways for a year, and the coordinator did great at Syracuse. Armstrong did terrible at at Virginia, but now they both get to reunite. There's nothing saying that Armstrong is going to be the definitive number 1 going into the season. He's going to have to win that job, but you normally aren't going to be transferring in if you're not going to be expected to get some playing time. So it should be interesting having a new offensive coordinator there that is someone he's obviously familiar with and had some success to see if he's going to be able to get that offense, flowing the way that it needs to be.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, like in his best year at UVA 2 years ago, he had 31 passing touchdowns, not a huge, running threat in terms of, touchdowns and stuff there. So it's not like Hartman, who's been up in the near 40. But he's got good upside, not quite the stats like Tanner Mordecai had at SMU, but he's transferring over to Wisconsin. I like him this year because of the coaching shift, the culture shift. It's going to be so intriguing to watch Wisconsin and kind of see what they become this year. And I think he'll win that starting job. He'll have it probably for a year before his it's hard to say on eligibility, all like 1 or 2 years left. Like I look at Sam Hartman on his stats profile on ESPN. He's played 5 years and he's listed as a junior. So who knows how many years left that Mordecai has. But I like him at Wisconsin. I think that's going to be a fun one to follow. And then lastly, kind of a guy that I really wanted coming out of high school. Jeff Sims went to Georgia Tech. The first year they were kind of starting over from a triple option offense going to a more standard college football offense, and just didn't have the tools, didn't have the line around him. And so I'm intrigued to see what he'll do potentially at Nebraska. Really excited there on Jeff Sims.
So, Doug, who are the quarterbacks that you want to talk about? You don't have to go top 5. You don't have to go in order. But who are the quarterbacks you want to make sure that you call out?
So there's 2 quarterbacks that are on my list that I'm kind of excited to watch and see what they do with a different system. And your old quarterback, Leary, going to Kentucky, he's got some weapons there. I think it just depends how he comes back from this injury. But he does have some good young receivers in Kentucky. I would be really interested to see if he can put some pieces together and maybe reclaim some draft stock this coming season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Leary be in an offense where hopefully there's more of like a top receiver and a top running back. NC State historically was like you couldn't trust anybody out of the backfield as a running back. You couldn't trust any receiver because you could have 7 different guys be the leading receiver over 7 different weeks, and none of them were world beaters. And, it'd be nice to see if he can be in an offense that's actually got a true number 1 running back, a true number 1 wide receiver, to see how he can perform and see the kind of stats that can be produced by those guys as well.
And then one more that I've got, and it's somebody I drafted and I had to drop. But Hudson Card going to Purdue, brand new coach at Purdue. He was a 4-star recruit coming in. A lot of people in Texas were excited about the kid. I was excited about the kid. I want to see if he can, put a good college career together, because I think he's got the tools. I just, maybe it's a system thing. Maybe it's a mindset thing. I don't know, but I'd be interested to see what he can do at Purdue this year.
So for me, we've already talked about most of my guys at the top. Sam Hartman was my overall number 1. Obviously, Leary and Armstrong. But I'm really interested to see what happens with Shedeur Sanders going to Colorado.
It's going to be fun.
Because this is a kid that I don't care what he does. This is a coach's kid. Mm-hmm. The guy is not going to be the starter. There's no way that Primetime is going to bench his own kid. He did great at Jackson State. Do I think that he's going to go to Colorado and be a world beater? I don't know. But I think that the upside potential for somebody like Shedeur Sanders is probably the highest of anybody we've ever seen, just because of all the other things around him. Great at the FCS level, dad is a coach, all the hype around him. You're going to have a lot of national hype there. So this guy has a chance to make a huge name for himself if he can come in here and continue what he did at Jackson State.
Man, this reminds me of like roster building in the NCAA video game, like dynasty mode, when you're like taking over a you know, a school that's underperforming, at least compared to when I was little. Really, really little. So little that I don't really remember it. But anyways, yeah, man, they're bringing in huge recruits to a one-star school essentially, and it's going to be super fun to watch from that point of view.
All right, so why don't we move over to running backs? I'm going to take running backs first. Doug, we're going to let you take wide receivers first.
All right.
So running backs, my number one overall is Carson Steele. I like seeing him go from Ball State, where he was putting up some crazy fantasy stats, to UCLA. I just think that that's a really good match. I really look forward to seeing what he does there. Trey Sanders, I like seeing him going from Alabama to TCU. I just think that those are both really good matches, especially considering the people that are leaving. But those are the two, like I said, that I really wanted to call out, as well as Marquez Cooper. Going from Kent State to Ball State, you're talking about being in the same area. You're not talking about a guy going from a group of five to a high power five. You're talking about basically a parallel move, but the parallel move is from high-powered passing offense to high-powered offense that produced huge running stats. So to me, those are the guys that I'm really looking at in the running back room. So BMAC, why don't we go to you? Why don't you talk about who your top guys are at running back?
Yeah, fifth, I've got Sean Tyler. He was a solid running back at Western Michigan and kind of hasn't lived up to what you would hope out of the fantasy, production. Going to Minnesota, who had the 16th best rushing offense last year. So just kind of keeping an eye on him. I like him. Trey Sanders is another guy I like, don't love, going from Bama to TCU. Has he fully recovered from, the accident that happened early in his career? That's kind of slowed him down. I'm not quite sure. Third, Marquez Cooper. Yep. For all the reasons you said, he's filling the shoes of where Carson Steele left ball to go to UCLA, and Cooper will be there and he'll have really good production, He'll probably be, I can't say this because we haven't done it quite yet, but he'll probably be a top 20 running back for us, somewhere around there at least. And second, I've got Marshawn Lloyd going from South Carolina to USC. In terms of like NFL potential, who's the best player on this list? It's Marshawn Lloyd. Like, he's got such a great talent. Will he claim that number one running back, or will you see other people like have a big off season and demand touches like Raleek Brown and other backs that they have on the roster? And then, yeah, Matt, I agree with you. Number one running back for fantasy, at least, Carson Steele, going from high level, good production at Ball State, great fantasy player, to UCLA, where he's got a shot to blow up. Like, will he be a top 10 running back? We'll see in terms of fantasy, but there's definitely potential there.
All right, Doug, what do you got? Who do you want to call out as in the running back room?
So I agree with most of y'all's lists. My top running back is actually my top portal player that I'm keeping an eye on, and I think it's Trayshawn Ward. Going from FSU to Kansas State, the kid averages over 6 yards at every time he touches the ball. He had an injury derail his season last year, and
he runs hard.
I just feel like every time that kid touches the ball, he's got the potential to go the entire length of the field.
Yeah, if you think of someone that runs angry, he fits the bill. And he doesn't have the top end speed, but yeah, man, he could be potentially great there. Filling in for Deuce Vaughn, right?
Yep. So he's my number one overall that I get most excited about talking about in the transfer stuff. And then another kid. What's that?
You gonna draft him?
Oh man, if he's there, I'm gonna need at least one running back. But my running backs are pretty solid, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got one you just mentioned. I got Marshawn Lloyd. I don't expect him to transfer out to USC and not start.
Changing my draft order right now. Make sure I go and get him before Doug.
And the other one that I've got on my list that I'm hoping does well is Harrison Whaley, another kid that I don't feel like got the touches he deserved.
Some games he did, and then the next game he'd get one.
Right. I mean, the kid had multiple 200-yard rushing games, and all of a sudden you don't see him for 2 weeks. And then so it was just crazy to me. So he's going to Wyoming. I don't know what to expect from Wyoming's offense, but I expect him to be at least a feature part of it.
Well, I'll tell you, that's funny that you bring that up because the last thing I was going to bring up was exactly that situation at Wyoming. He actually goes into a pretty good situation because Titus Wen produced some big games there for Wyoming. He was somebody that was on my radar last year. He currently doesn't have a new home. He's left Wyoming, or he's put his name in the portal, and he's currently trying to find a home. But
I think he was actually
last I read
dismissed.
It was draft.
He was dismissed from the team.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think he put his name into the draft, I believe.
Yeah.
Because Swen's a guy that definitely is had my eye on him. So I think that having Whaley going to Wyoming definitely helps. That's interesting. I didn't realize that he had been dismissed, because I know the first word was that he was going to the portal, but maybe he was just saying that to save face. I don't know.
Yeah, 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns last year on the ground. So yeah, I mean, good opportunity, I think, for Whaley. That's a good call out there.
All right, so Doug, we're going to go to you first. Who do you want to call out when it comes to the wide receiver room? Who's got the best chance to be a big name in 2023 that's changing schools?
So I've got two really at the top of my list that stand out above everybody else for me. And it's one that I've talked about. I even mentioned his name on the last podcast. And Brian knows I'm high on this kid. And Matt, if you want to change your order and your draft board, go ahead. But it's Sturdivant. He was at Cal last year as a freshman. 65 catches for 755 yards and 7 touchdowns as a freshman. And he's going to UCLA, who is usually an offensive type team. But he is my number one. My number two would be Keontae Johnson from Troy. He's going to Oregon. He was the receiving leader for Troy last year. And at Oregon, believe it or not, is still a guy named Bo Nix, who is Keontae Johnson's adopted brother. Oh. So they played together in high school. And I just think it could be really exciting with him and Troy Franklin and even Trayshawn Holden going to Oregon. They could have 3 potentially really good receivers at Oregon. But I think Johnson could take that number 2 spot, and him and Troy Franklin could have a lot of fun.
Yeah, so in my opinion, it could totally play out like that, but I think Troy Franklin's like the clear number 1. And I think he's so good. And number 2 receiver still might be all right in that offense, but I think Bo Nix just claims such a high percentage of the fantasy stats. I don't know if you're going to really like to roster another guy, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you'll take him and we'll play this clip back in a year and make fun of me. But I've got
the other way around, or the other way around. You make fun of me if I take him.
I've also got J. Michael Sturdivant number 1 on my receiver board, and I like him a lot. And I think he's going to a really potentially great situation, provided the quarterback, like, who's it going to be at UCLA? Is it going to be the freshman that wins the job? Probably at some point. Or is it going to be the senior Colin Schlee, who's transferring out of Kent like everyone else who played at Kent last year? And then at number 2, I've got like the opposite of you. I've got a guy transferring from Oregon to Tennessee, Dante Thornton. I think he's going to be awesome there and potentially right away. Number 3, I've got Dante Cephas another guy leaving Kent,
Mm-hmm.
but he's going to Penn State. Penn State's got the Drew Aller era starting, and that's going to be super fun. They had great success with transfer receivers in the past, so I like him there. Any thoughts there on Cephas?
Cephas was my number 2 overall player. Kent State having a great offense. Dante Cephas, the unquestioned number 1.
Nice.
Going from Kent to Penn State, he probably was in a better passing offense. He probably was in a better stat producing offense at Kent. So I would say be a little bit careful there as far as expecting big time production at Penn State. But he also is the kind of guy that does have that breakout potential. If you're in a college to pro kind of league, I think that this is probably going to help his draft stock a lot if he can go there and produce decent numbers at Penn State. But I think Dante Cephas is probably the guy that has the best chance to raise his stock going from his former school to his current school.
And Drew Aller's got probably one of the best arms in all of college football. So that's going to be fun to kind of see that offense stretch out and see how that affects, the running game with Allen and Singleton. And Aller, who is a dual threat guy. Does anyone have, let's see, I've got 4th on my list, Chris Marshall.
I don't
Former
have Marshall.
5-star talent. I'm a sucker for talent, and going to a Lane Kiffin offense where historically now, last year was different, right? With the running game that he featured, kind of similar to his Devin Singletary days at FAU, but in a passing offense, a Kiffin passing offense, he likes to really kind of lean on one guy. And I think Chris Marshall, with his size and speed, overall talent, could be that guy. Definitely some risk involved if you're drafting now to take him now, but totally someone I'll target, depending on spring reports and fall reports going into draft season. And then lastly, JoJo Earl. Was really sad to kind of see him get hurt as the season started last year at Alabama. Kind of thought he would have breakout potential, but him going to TCU, great offense for him to put up a bunch of stats and kind of dominate the slot probably.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up JoJo Earl. I think it's going to be interesting this year. One of the things to keep my eyes on is all the wide receivers that are leaving Alabama going to what they would think are potentially greener pastures. This is an uncommon occurrence. Normally you see guys transferring into Alabama to make a name for themselves. Last year, Alabama's receiving corps was just terrible overall compared to the previous half a decade. So you see 3 different guys that are transferring out, going elsewhere. So to see if those guys actually do better in these new locations is going to be interesting, because that might be, who would have ever thought that people are going to use Alabama as a stepping stone to greener pastures. But right. It's going to be interesting to see all 3 of those guys, Earl, Holden, and Leary, where they're going to go and what's going to happen there. The other person is Allie Jennings, the third. The guy decided, hey, I want to go in the transfer portal, but I want to still be able to ride my bike from one school to the other. So he transfers from Old Dominion to Virginia Tech. I think that's an interesting move. Again, I don't know if Virginia Tech's offense is going to be a world beater, but I think
so bad. It's disappointing. Like, they used to be great, obviously, or at least consistently really good.
Just getting him into a higher profile school that's going to have more higher profile games is going to be interesting to see if he can make something for himself in that higher profile situation.
Yep. The only other receiver that I have, and he was kind of way down my list, but he's somebody that, I personally picked up in the transfer portal this year on my fantasy team. And I'm interested to see how he's going to do, is Elijah Spencer going from Charlotte to Minnesota. I don't know entirely what that offense looks like. But you mentioned the Alabama guys, and I just think it's funny. I was going to ask, do you think JoJo Earl has the potential to be better out of those 3 guys that are leaving? Because, they're all pretty good. They've all...
From a fantasy point of view, I think so.
Yeah.
I think he's got the chance to be the lead guy at TCU in an offense that's going to throw it around a ton. So, yeah, I think so. Leary, though, I like him. He could be really good.
Yeah, I'm like you said, I'm interested to see what
we'll see at UCF.
I'm interested to see what's going to happen at Alabama with the new OC. I don't even know if they've hired anybody yet, but they're going to be getting a new OC. And honestly, I don't remember what receivers they have at this point to even
Yeah,
talk about them.
Burton kind of took off at the very end of the year after the fantasy season was done. He started having some good games. I traded him like middle of the year. I traded for him right before the draft, thinking it was a really good trade for me, but it was not. At least not last year's production. So there's potential there, but what are they going to do offensively? Which quarterback do they go with? And that's going to play a big role in kind of how you view the receiver position. Because if you look at, the two different styles of quarterback that they potentially have, like they could just, eat up all the production. So we'll see.
Yep.
All right. So is there anybody else out there that you want to call out, whether they're a tight end or whether they're a guy that for any other reason you want to call out that we haven't talked about today?
You say call out? Okay, let's eyes on me for a second. Eric Gilbert. I'm looking at you. I'm going to keep you on my roster this season.
And we love it.
Year.
We love it because he wastes a roster spot on you every year.
It's so nice. So nice.
If I didn't have Brock Bowers, I would cut you, Eric Gilbert. But I do have Brock Bowers. So you'll be on my roster yet again. And hopefully I draft a third tight end that produces. But in reality, with the talent that Gilbert has, man, I want to see him do something at Alabama or at Nebraska. So we'll see there. Jaheim Bell, though, the transfer from South Carolina to FSU, really good potential. FSU historically, it's been a while since they've had like a fantasy relevant tight end, like a long while. And with the running quarterback there, the talent is there for Bell. How is he used in that offense? Does he get enough touches to be fantasy relevant? We'll kind of see. And then I don't know how to say the name, Caden Prescorn, Memphis to Ole Miss. And he was a top 5 tight end at the end of last year, believe it or not, in fantasy. So we'll see what he does at Ole Miss. It could be really good if they, have a highly productive passing offense, which they didn't really have last year, although they did get better at the end of the year. And then a couple more real quick. So CJ Dupree from Maryland to Alabama, he's got really good potential there to play right away in an offense that, we'll see how they use him. And then Eric All from Michigan to Iowa. Iowa's a tight end factory. Laporta is going to be taken in the draft this year, so All should step right in and be a starter there.
So BMAC, I got a question for you on the Eric Gilbert front. As people know, the CFB Dynasty Home League is college to pro. If there was no pro component to the league, would you still feel the same way about Eric Gilbert?
No.
Or are you keeping Eric Gilbert specifically because you don't want to see him go to the pros and blow up?
Yeah, NFL potential. That's it. That's the only reason I'm keeping him.
So if somebody's watching this and they are playing in just a college dynasty, what would your words be to them about Gilbert?
You should have cut him like a while ago. And,
so you don't think? So you're saying you don't think Gilbert actually has potential in college to do
he
much
does.
of anything?
No, he does. No, he totally does. Just because he's really good. In terms of, he was a top 5 player, a 5-star tight end. Those don't even come around every year. They don't come around every 3 years. Out of high school, and whatever he has going on in personal life or whatever that's kind of keeping him away, like maybe moving to the cornfields of Nebraska is a good way to kind of get away and refocus his life. Who knows? I don't have any sort of information or haven't looked into any of that situation. I don't even know if there's news out there about why he hasn't really seen the field at UGA since he got there. So,
well, the other thing to keep in mind about Nebraska is they've got Matt Rule out there now, who knows how to get players to the pros, man. I mean, he was there. And since they got Matt Rule, their transfer portal has been insane.
Yeah.
people have been signing with Nebraska like crazy. So you could see a completely different team there. And, you know, Gilbert could be a guy that benefits from having a coach who has been to the big stage. So maybe Matt Rule is a guy that can keep Gilbert out of his own head if that's the problem or whatever the case may be. But Matt Rule knows how to get things done in the pros. So we'll see if he can help a kid get there.
Well, BMAC, on behalf of all the other owners in CFB Dynasty, we appreciate you. Wasting a roster spot in college on Eric Gilbert leaves other players out there for us. So continue to do that. And we also look forward to seeing where the next location is that Eric Gilbert transfers to. All right. So the only other person I want to call out is Grayson McCall. Grayson McCall puts his name in the transfer portal, then pulls it back out after the coaching switch and decides he wants to stay with Tim Beck at Coastal Carolina. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the Coastal Carolina offense. You can't really do much better than Grayson McCall has been doing in fantasy. He was my number one quarterback pretty much for the last 2 years, and I've got a decent quarterback room. So is he going to be able to maintain that, exceed that, or is he going to fall backwards a little bit because Tim Beck's offenses last year didn't produce great quarterback numbers? So it's going to be interesting to see, did McCall make the right move by staying at Coastal, or should he have gone and gone somewhere else?
So he tried to transfer out. Like, he visited Auburn and he was projected to go there, and then it didn't work out. Same with Florida. And there was some weirdness, I believe, with like credits not transferring or something like that. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure he didn't like that kind of playing out in front of the national public, but
Right.
I think he'll be business as usual for him. I think he'll be a good player. Wanted to transfer out and kind of see what he could do at a bigger school, and it didn't work out for him.
Well, that's what we have for the transfer portal. As you saw, BMAC pulled up a page on the CFBDynasty.com website. We definitely want you guys to go up there. Make sure you subscribe during the season. That way you can get all your in-season rankings. But we also want to know what you think. We want you guys to go up to our Discord channel. Go to Discord and go to look for CFB Dynasty. We want to know who you guys are excited about in the transfer portal. We want to know your opinions. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? We also want to know if there's somebody out there that you think that, you know, you're surprised we didn't even talk about once between the three of us, that you think is going to be a blue chip star that just completely went under our radar. So please go on up there to the Discord channel for CFBDynasty.com and interact with us and let us know what you think. That being said, this is going to be the end of the conversation on the transfer portal for now. But next week, we got a great show ready for you. At the time of this recording, yesterday was National Signing Day. As we know, it's more of a tempered day. It used to be a huge day in college football. You know, I'd look BMAC would take days off from work. I'd wake up and I'd be refreshing to see who's actually signed their letters with my school, to see if there's any late flips, anything like that. But with the early signing day, the vast majority of those signees happen in December, so that day becomes a little more tempered in February. That being said, now that all of the freshmen are basically at the schools they're going to be at, there's still a few holdouts still out there. Now we can start talking about the top freshmen for 2023 that you need to keep your eyes on. BMAC's got some big things ready for the show next week. BMAC, tell them what all the stuff is that we're going to be doing next week.
Well, yeah. So not only would I take that day off for signing day, because it was a massive day. It was all day coverage on ESPNU. Rivals Radio was the thing back then, and that was a blast. But that's when you could start plugging in the new freshmen into the NCAA video game back in the day, and start new dynasties, kind of start fresh. Good times. Anyways, yeah. So we'll be going over the top freshmen. We'll have our rankings posted and everything by then for the top freshmen, kind of based on fantasy production and outlook. Soon we'll be doing a Devy rankings update, which will include these freshmen too. But we'll be doing a live mock draft next week. Looking forward to it.
It'll be fun.
It's going to be great. So, Doug, what do you have going on? But before we got online, I said I saw that you We're out there bowling, dropping in some big scores. I saw that you came in number 2 while you were bowling. I mean, you did not win. You came in 2. So what else are you going to do this weekend that's going to have you come in second place?
It's going to come. Well, in second, if me and Brian decide to play golf, I'll probably come in second. I've been holding that second place position pretty strong and pretty firm with Brian, even though it's been just us, but I'm happy with coming in second. I don't have to tell people that there's only 2 of us, but now you guys know. And second place this week, I'm not going to tell my nephew this, but I'm going to watch his soccer tournament this weekend. My family is pretty good at getting second. So I'm hoping he surprises me, but we'll see what happens with that.
Good stuff. Good stuff. B-Mac, what is on your calendar coming up between now and the next time we record a podcast?
Yeah, really just working on those freshman rankings, kind of getting my draft board prepped and starting to take some of this information, research prepping for this show from Portal, and then starting to adjust our rankings a little bit on the CFB Dynasty side for national rankings. So I think Doug and I will meet up once or twice before the next show, kind of get everything squared away, ready to go. And man, it's a month away. We're going to be talking about some spring practice reports, just getting really excited.
And speaking of second, Matt, I'm going to find a way to hack into your computer and Brian's computer, steal y'all's draft boards for this season so that I don't come in second again.
I think we need to be hacking into yours because remember, you came in second. I'm hoping to get to that point. As for me, I'm getting ready to launch our next Kickstarter at Insymmetry Creations. It's for our all ages title Misfits Clubhouse. Think Wreck-It Ralph, Fairly Odd Parents, and Gravity Falls in comic form. About a bunch of wacky and wild adventures of 4 kids, Mickey, Stig, Fairy, and Sloth. If you go up to tinyurl.com/misfits2, and that's spelled MISFITZ and the number 2, you can bookmark the campaign. We're going to be launching it here in a week or 2. We actually just signed on a former Disney animator that's doing one of the covers for us. So really excited about that one. So I hope you guys will take a look.
It's awesome.
All right, with that being said, for Doug Gravely and Brian McKelfers, my name is Matt Knowles. This has been the CFBDynasty.com podcast. We'll see you next week.